Hi guys, this series of Node.js from zero to hero, we're going to demonstrate on how to use Passport and JsonWebToken in creating a secure login page. So now, without any further ado, let's get started. To start with, I'm going to create a new folder. I'll be naming this as passport-jwt. For this demo, I'll be using VS Code. And here guys, you can use any IDE as long there is a Node in your operating system. So this should work. This one here. Let me remind you guys that in this topic, I won't be using any database. This will only cover up the basic syntax or the concept of using Passport and JsonWebToken. So let's start. To start with, we'll be initialized first by setting up npm int -y or yes. This will set up our package.json, and for our package will be needed the following. First, I'll install npm express and JsonWebToken. For those who don't know how to use WebToken, please watch my previous series, my topic on regarding JSON WebToken. So this is a combination of JSON WebToken and Passport. Now, another thing is, I'm going to install also MPI Lodash. Our Lodash here will serve as our temporary database. So whatever the performance here will also be effectively the same with the using of connecting or using the API of database. So it makes no difference. Okay, so that one is done. Next, we need to install npmi or passport and passport -jwt. Okay, good. Let's clear this up. Okay, let's review our package. So as of the time of this recording, our dependencies are the following. So we have the Express of 4.17, JSON WebToken of 8.5, Lodash of 4.17, Passport of 0.4, and Passport JWT with a version of 4.0. Okay, cool. So the next thing we need to create now is our entry point. So from here, going to create file names server.js, and from here going to set up our basic express bar express require express and bar app equals to express And from here, going to set app.set. So let's say this is our port. Then process dot oops, should be process dot env dot port or set that to 4000, and our var server equals to app dot listen to app dot get. First we need to get that variable port, and then from here we're going to initialize our or identify our error. The error should be if error. We need to throw that error. So error. Then we need to set our message. In this one is server is running at say at http://localhost. Then from here we need to call out our server that address dot port. Okay, then from here we need to call the console.log for the message. Okay, cool. So that's our basic setup. Let's check everything first. Localhost address, oops, this should be port. Okay, so let's start running. Okay, guys, for this part here, I'll be using NodeMon, but I won't install NodeMon, but instead I'll be using npx, then going to call NodeMon server. So we have undefined. Let's check why this is undefined. Set port process.env port 4000 server app.listen app.get port functioner equal to running at http. This one is undefined. Okay, so could be like this. Okay, so yeah, that works. So if we click this one here, first, so I think that is okay now. Now since we don't have any page head for this part or this section here, so that's okay. So let's go back again to our setup. Okay, so that's it. So our first part is okay. Now the next part is we need now to set up our to start going to Let's move this first, just to make sure that we have a clean setup here. Okay, the first thing we need to do now is we need to set up first our temporary database. And to do that, I'll be initialize a temporary data storage. So let's say from here, going to call set up this in this manner. So let's say ID of 1, username, let's say wiki, password, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we need to create another one. And let's say this is switch with a password of 67890. Okay, so that should be it. All right. So don't you worry, guys. Whatever the concept here, it still applies on the RIA or the actual database. So now that we set up our temporary data, the next thing we need to call now is we need to load our call our Lodash. Okay, and from here, I'll be calling also the JWT. So this will be our JSON Web Token. We're going to initialize everything. I think that's much better. So require JSON Web Token. Also, from this point here, going to call as well as our passport. And this is passport. Oops. And this one here is our passport-jwt. So require passport-jwt. Okay, cool. Okay, now that we set up our package, this corner here, and also our temporary data, the next thing we need to set now is our strategy. So to do that, from this section here, we're going to call var JWT options. So this will be our JWT options. So from here, we're going to call that. Then going to call JW3 from requests. Then going to extract JWT. Now for this one, we can use. We'll be using as bearer token. So we're going to from here we need to call that from header as bearer token. Okay, that should be it. So from old header as bearer token. Okay, so that's the next one. Now, since we're using bearer token, we will require a secret key. So to do that, we need to type that secret or key. Now for this demo, nothing special. I just use my secret. That should be it. Okay. In a real application, you can use you can make a secure secret key for this one. But since this is a demo, I'll be using some simple secret key only. Okay, so now that we set up our JWT options, now we need to call that by calling our bar strategy. So from here, we need to call new JWT strategy. Okay, and from here, going to call that options. So let's say from here, then we're going to call the function a JWT payload. Then also next. Okay, so this will on this part here, this strategy will scan the content. So we're going to display this section here. So let's type console.log. So on here we indicate that this payload was received. AWT payload. Okay, cool. That should be fine. Then from here, we're going to call the user, and using our temporary data, which is the users. As you recall here, this is our temporary data. So I'm going to call that. Then since we don't have a database, I'll be calling or using the Lodash. So from here, this will perform the find index. So this will serve as the search function. But basically, this is the concept where you put the search command here in a real database. Just for this demo, I'll be using this Lodash to be served as our database. So from here, need to type the ID and the JWT payload.id. Okay, so this will be our primary key for this one. Yeah, so that should be it. Now that we set up our finding index, so once found, so I'm going to set up here, if user is found, what we need to do is we can skip this one by putting a null and the user. This will return the user content. Else, this will proceed to the null with an error exemption. So this will return a false value. Okay, so that's the setup for the strategy. And from this section here, we will set up our passport or activate that strategy. Okay, cool. So let's say I better need to move this one down below. Here. Okay. So let's check this. Why is it we have an error? New strategy or JWSC is not defined. So we need to check why this one's not defined. So this is the good thing with NodeMon, because you can really you can check right away what's the issues. So according here, the error is under 29. So don't check on 29. JWT strategy. Oh yeah, it's okay. JWT options. That seems fine. passport-jwt. Yeah, we already have. From here, xpass function. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we forgot something. So before we proceed to that part, we need first to declare the following. So the first one is we need to declare the var extract JWT. And from here, we're going to call that passport JWT. This will be our extract. Also, we need to call that variables JWT strategy. So this will be our passport JWT strategy. Okay, so that should be it. So if I highlight this one, that's the one it's calling. So this is where the errors occur a while ago. So okay, so maybe need to refresh this one just to make sure. Here. Okay, so there's another error. So it's not defined. Strategy here. Passport GW strategy. More options. And we set up the strategy. Okay. It says 29. So bar strategy 29. Secret or key JW from request option passport. Okay, so I think this should be removed. Okay, so from this point here, we're going to get the declaration. So we call this extract JWT. So better we need to time up with this one. So instead of big letter, let's say should be JWT. Okay, so let's check that. Okay, good. So there's no more error. So at this point here, we managed to complete our strategy. Okay, that should be it. Okay, so now that we set up our strategy, the next thing we need to do now is we need to initialize our passport. So to do that, we need to first we need to call our passport by calling this up, then set up to use. Then we assign our passport. And from here, need to initialize. So that should be the next step. Okay. Now that we set up our passport to initialize, the next thing we need to do now is we're going to create our first request. So to do that, I will be using app.get. So from this point here, going to call the initial request. I'm going to call the function rec and res. And going to return a JSON. Okay, so this should be a JSON. And going to just for the message. So I'm going to return this as welcome. welcome message. Okay, cool. Now, at this point here, since we don't have a front end to receive this request, I will be using Thunder Client. So for you guys, if you don't know what is Thunder Client, now if this is your first time, for you guys to get this extension, just type Thunder Client. So, and take note this extension. So this should be the icon for that. So make sure that you have pick up the correct word and install. So Thunder Client is also the counterpart of the Postman. If you are a fan of Postman, Thunder Client will serve also the same concept as Postman. So okay, so that's small bit of intro. So from here, you need to click New Request. Then I'm going to copy this one here. Then I'm going to paste that here. Okay. Now, since these are default, just for the test, we need to ensure that our request is working. So to do that, you need to click Send. There you go. So from this point here, we can perform now our basic requests and the things that we need to use when using a request from, or basically what we do is we make a test login for this one, and then from that login we'll perform the basic concept of passport and JsonWebToken. So let's start. So from this point, since this is working, so the next thing is we need to create a post request. Post request. Okay, what we do is we need to perform a temporary login. So from here, the user will perform a basic login function to receive the request. To do that, we need to type in this manner. Back and rest. Okay, then if better we need to do it in this way. Let's say going to extract the username and body of password. Then we're going to get this from the request body, rec.body. Okay. Block statement. Okay. Or maybe, yeah, I guess this won't be long, so I better do the normal stuff. So from here, going to request dot body dot username. Then from here, going to compare the rec dot body dot password. This is password. Okay. So what we do is once we found that this is not empty, so we need to assign that the username is equals to Wes, or simply copy this one here. Just to save our time. Then from here, going to call var password Then request, simply copy this one here and paste. Okay, so this will tell that the user that this is if there's a value, this will capture those variables or these input values or request values. So from here, we're going to perform a search query. So I'm going to call var user equals to users. Then going to load dash to perform our find index. Of course, we need to call our temporary database here, which is the users. Then from here, going to match up with the username. Okay, so what it does is this will search the value or compare the username from the inputs. Then using the load dash, this is the load dash, that serves a method to research or search within this value of array in our declaration. So that's the purpose of this line here. Now, let's say you're going to make a if not user. So let's say there's nothing or there's no value or there's no comparison. I'm going to perform a res status of 401.json with a message of no such user. Found. Okay, so this will tell that there's no user. So if okay, so next is we need to compare. So this time, this portion here, it says that we already have our comparisons, which means the past next line here indicates that this one, or you can say maybe we could put this in else statement. So which means there's a comparison. So if there's a user from here, so this will pass on the value of the password. So the password now, we're going to make a comparison, correct? That body, that password. Okay, if there are match, okay. So if the password are matched with the existing user, so this will capture, or let's convert this into payload. So from this point here, I'll be using the primary key, which is the ID. Then our ID here is the user ID from our temporary database. So that will serve as our payload. Then we're going to assign a token that would apply now with our JsonWebToken. So this is our JsonWebToken. So we need to assign that. Let's call our payload. And of course, we need also the JsonWebToken options with the secret key. Okay, so that's the next part. Then we're going to return a JsonWebToken. So to do that, we need to type res.json and with a message. Here, going to set return this OK. Then we're going to return the value of the converted token. So this will be our, of course, our token. Okay. Now, if there's no match, so we'll tell the user going to return a rest status for one.json. Message is that password did not match. Okay, so let's check our coding here. Oh, there's a closing error here. So this is line 89. So this one. So we'll make sure that everything is okay. So on here, this is the closing tag. Usually, if it is the longest line, most of the case, the closing tags are the issues. We need to be very sharp on checking those closing tags. Okay, so I guess that one is okay now. So let's check again. Okay, cool. So this is okay. Now, we're going to add additional setup. Since we're going to return a body request from input, basically what we do is we need to return that as a JSON. So to do that, we need to initialize our server or our backend to receive a JSON format. So from our request, to do that, we need to type @queues. Then we're going to call the express.json to read that as a JSON. Then that JSON will convert to URL encode. So we need to call express.url encode. And of course, you need to set up to extended. Oops. Should be extended equals to true. Okay, so that should be it. Now let's emphasize this one. Yeah, I think that should be fine. So let's try this command here. So to do that, we're going to make another request. So we'll be calling our Thunder client. From here, I'm going to copy this line here and paste here. Then going to perform post command. Okay, what are the elements that we need? So from here, I'm going to send a JSON format with the following. So of course, the first thing is we need to identify our username and our password. So let's say for this demo, I'm going to call my username and the password, let's say 1111. So this is an error. So let's check first if this works. So there's an error here. So I need to check. Unexpected token in JSON at position 16. So we need to check that. Seems this is fine. Let's verify our errors once more. token. So let's check our request. Oh yeah, this is invalid. If you're returning a JSON, make sure this is the format. Okay, so make sure you have a basic knowledge of JSON. So I guess this is okay now. So let's try again. There you go. Expect unexpected JSON string at position 30. So what does it return here? JSON 30. Now let's check. Okay, one more. Bikama. Okay, so that's on the input side issue. So let's try again. Hopefully this is okay now. Yeah, so that should work. Let's send. Okay, so we have another error. Cannot pause. Okay, why we cannot pause? It's simply because we called the wrong URL. So from here, take note we're using /login. So we should ensure that we're using the correct URL. So let's go back here and paste that in here. Okay, so that should be okay. So let's try now for the last time. There you go. Okay, at this point here, our login command is working. So let's try. So to do that, we'll set up the correct account. So for this one, I just made up so that we will receive a invalid match. So let's go back to our code and check our temporary data. So from here, I have a username, wiki, and a password. This password here. So we're going to apply that. So wiki, then the password is 12345 and send. There you go. Okay, so this is the format, guys, that we're looking at. So at this point here, we create a temporary JsonWebToken. Then at this point, we're going to apply that in our setup to perform the passport authentication. So this is very important because this is the one that we'll be using in our passport authentication. So let's create that command. Okay, so that part is okay. So let's proceed with the passport authentication. Now this is where the passport authentication will comes in. So let's say okay. So from here, we're going to make another request, and for that request, we're going to call app.get. So let's say this is my old page or old secret page. Okay, so this will be our name of our secured URL or our secret page. So from here, we're going to apply our passport. So this time, we're going to apply the authenticate. So using authenticate, we're going to combine the method of JsonWebToken. So to do that, we need to apply JWT and with the session to pulse. Okay, so that's the first part. Now what it does is this will check the validity or the token that we're going to receive from our page. So next, from this point here, I'm going to call the function res, then res.json. So we're going to create a success message. To that, we need to type success. that says your token is valid. Oops. Okay, so we have an error here. Function string. Plus callback got an object. That's weird. Let's check once more. Why does I this one here? It's here. So this is up. That get. Yeah, we need to close this one. Oh, so this one did not. Okay, so there you go. That should be okay. Okay, good. So there's a open braces issue. So this is the format. So passport-jwt, JsonWebToken. Okay, so that's it. So let's check our nodemon here. It requires an object. Routes 202. Seems fine. Get routes function JsonWebToken function press function. Okay, so I found the issues here. Should remove this comma here. So this is how you set up that. Okay, so that's working. So let's review again. So from here, we call out this URL auth. This is auth secret page. Then from here, we're going to assign the passport authentication. So this will check the page if it is valid or not. And if valid, this will return a success message that your token is valid. So let's check that in our URL. So to do that, we need to go back here and create from our Thunder client, we're going to create a new request. And of course, we need to copy this section and paste here. That should be get. And our URL. Going to copy that and paste here. So let's try what's okay. So let's try this one. Okay, so that's it. Now this is what our expectation. So what happened here is that this time our page is trying to authenticate if this is allowed, because at this point here we didn't return a request with a token. So to do that, okay, let's go back here. So this page now, or this URL, requires a authentication, so which is this the token authentication. So to do that, to pass the token, we need to go back on our previous request. So from here, I'm going to resend this again. There you go. Now this is very important when you're making a JWT request. Ensure that this token should be passed always whenever that you're going to perform a request. So from here, I'm going to copy this one. Then go back here. As you recall, whenever I access this page, this says unauthorized. So to resolve that, we will include our token, but for JSON, for this standard client, I'm going to apply that in here in auth, then going to set up on the bidder token. Okay, let's make this a little bigger, then paste that token. Oops, not that one. Let's copy this again, then oops, let's copy this, copy, and from here I want to paste that. Okay, so why is not copying? I'll be using Notepad. I think my BS Code has problem. So yeah, this one won't copy. So ensure this one is can copy. There. Okay, now that we paste our bidder token, the bidder token, so this will authenticate our page. So let's move this one here. Okay, so let's try again. So from here, I'm going to click send. There you go. Okay, so that's it, guys. So let's go back and review our things that we have done so far. Okay. Now, this is the key point in succeeding to create this type of authentication. So, as we recall, with this demo, we perform a request using passport and JsonWebToken. Nowadays, JsonWebToken is one of the most powerful. So we apply the combination of passport and JsonWebToken to secure our page. So also we create a temporary data. So this will be our temporary data. So if you're using any database, you can substitute that with this value. And for that to work, make sure you set up the strategy information so that this will be applied in our passport. So this will analyze for our passport using this strategy. Now, there's a key point here. Make sure you're using any complicated secret key. But for now, I'm just using a temporary secret key here. So on your own, you can create on your own based on your necessity. So next, after initialize that passport, with that, we can apply that simply in our login command. So usually this falls on our login page. So as we perform that, if we success, it will return a JSON token with the information of the, okay, this is the payload. So this is the information converted to JSON Web Token. So that return the request during our URL request. So this is the part here. Okay, so that's the purpose of that. Also, from our coding, we create a test secure page to authenticate that information by using the token passed down to our passport. And lastly, we're using Thunder Client to perform this request. So if you're familiar with Postman, so Thunder Client is really a good choice for this one. So that's it, guys. Okay, so that's it. So if you found this video informative, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And see you guys on the next video series. Cheers!